Hi, everybody. Welcome to the KC CHIROPulse podcast brought to you by CATS Consultants, helping doctors keep their pulse on success. I'm Dr. Michael Perusich, and I'm joined with my co-host today, Dr. Alex Kallio. Dr. Alex, I want to talk about the world of sports in relation to chiropractic and how, you and I both have had the experience of being a team doctor for sports teams. In fact, ironically, both of us for colleges. We have a very, very good friend who is one of the team doctors for a professional team. And there's just some great rewards to being a team doctor and being involved in that level. And I know you and I have talked about this a little bit before, but, I know a lot of docs out there just don't know how to get into it. And if you have to have special training and all that kind of stuff. So I thought that'd be a great topic for us today.
Yeah, absolutely. And that, I think as far as, the idea of special training or what you need, I mean, obviously we're all kind of specialized a bit. It certainly helps if you've, maybe taken some interest down the sports line and managing that. But I think some of that kind of depends on what is your role with the team that you're,
But
jumping aboard. Are you, is this I've done a summer collegiate, baseball league, and it was very loosely handled on the medical side. So I did quite a bit of things. Sometimes it would be the first point of contact of the injury if a guy came in through the week to
yeah.
where now, with current sports, that it's very much a singular lane that you're in. So I think some of that kind of depends on what the situation is.
Yeah, I totally agree. In the professional world, probably you're going to be in just the chiropractic lane. You're there to adjust some players, and they have other medical staff that handles everything else. But sometimes I know my experience. So I worked with a college and all their teams. I worked with a semi-pro baseball team and a semi-pro football team. And on all of those, I was the only medical staff they had.
Yeah.
So, I'm seeing everything from broken fingers to blown out knees and concussions. And, so you really had to be on your toes. So I did get some extra training in like concussion protocols and taping and bracing and some of those kind of things. But,
Yeah.
Honestly, I think as chiropractors, we're very well equipped already just from our chiropractic education. I think we're pretty well equipped to fill that role in some way, whether it's just on the chiropractic adjusting side, or if you're truly in there with your med bag, pulling out tape and bandaging up
Yeah.
fingers and things.
Yeah.
So I think it's just important to really understand kind of what your lane is going to be. So I get this question a lot. How did you get that opportunity? And my answer is always very, very simple. I asked. I very simply just asked. So, for example, the college that I worked for, the athletic director lived next door to me, and so we were friends. And one day, not too long after they had moved in, I just said, "Hey, how are you taking care of the players? What kind of health care do they get?" And he just looked at me with a blank stare and said nothing. And I said, "Well, what do you think about me helping you guys out?" And he was floored that I would even offer. And so the first year we did it complimentary. And then, after that, there was some compensation afterwards. So, but how did you get involved?
Yeah, I mean, very similarly, and I think it depends on a little bit of, some of the smaller team stuff I've done in the past was kind of through a patient owned the team, and happened to get talking on that current situation, kind of similar to yours. It was, we've been seeing players on their own off and on over the years,
Yeah.
trying to get a foot in the door, and happen to have one of the newer staff employees move in next door and struck up a conversation, and he kind of got in front of the right person to get a foot in the door. And same, much like you, it's like, hey, who's doing this?
Yeah.
You guys have this in, and they happen to have brought in somebody. And I sat and stewed on it for a couple hours and reached back out, after a bit and said, we've been trying to get a foot in the door for the last couple of years. Whether we get the job or not, I just want a chance to sit down and talk about it. And they, from there, they're like, well, yeah, we want to bring you in too. So it just, you do need to be a little assertive. I think you got to go on that. You can't sit back and wait for it to come to you. If you
Right.
want to work with a sports team, you've got to go make those introductions, get in touch with the decision makers, there, and find out who that is, and just, go offer your services. And again, depending on the level, from whether that's high school or up to, collegiate or pro, there's going to be some different protocols there. But it most of the time, it's just a matter of asking and kind of getting your foot forward.
Yeah, it's just the simple ask, really, in most cases.
Yeah.
I want to keep talking about this topic, but we need to take a little break here just to get a word in from our sponsor. But we're talking about how chiropractors can get involved in sports and whether you need additional training and how do you get those opportunities. So we'll come back here in just a minute. We'll dive into this just a little deeper. We'll be right back. Here's a quick message from our sponsor, Katz Chiropractic Business Advisors. We'll be right back.
Is your team dropping the ball?
Do you have your go-to person who always has the ball?
Is your team trained and ready for what daily practice throws at them?
Can you depend on your team to catch the training on their own?
Let us help you hit it out of the park. We want to be your coach.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the KC CHIROPulse podcast. We are, I'm here with Dr. Alex Kallio, and we're talking about how to get involved in sports and how to do things like become part of a medical staff on a sports team or become the team physician, however that may come to play. And both of us had kind of a similar experience because the way we got involved was very simple. It was just asking. It was just kind of being in the right place at the right time and just asking the right people if we could get a foot in the door. And mine was met with a resounding yes immediately. And yours, you had to work at it just a little bit to fully get that door open. But you just, I'm going to use your word that you said at the top of the podcast, you had to be a little assertive.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's, it's just kind of following up and being persistent. I said, we've been working, I bet, gosh, at least 5-6 years, to get a foot in the door. And we finally got, a little change in regime, a little change in the staff that was around, but, finally got to a point where there was a yes. So, it's one of those, don't give up if you're wanting to get that foot in the door, but you got to put a little bit of something to it too. I mean, I put together a nice CV, of my history and my experiences and having worked with smaller teams and certainly educational training, all of that as well. So yeah, I had to go a little bit further than just a straight ask, but that's persistence. It pays off.
Yeah, it does pay off. It does pay off. So we started talking a little bit too about whether or not you need additional education. And I think we both agree that primarily, depending on what you're going to be doing on the team, for the team medically, I think chiropractors are pretty well equipped already. I don't know that additional training for the most part really helps a whole lot unless you're doing a lot of extra things. Like for example, I was the only doctor around. They didn't even have a trainer. So, if somebody sprained an ankle, for example, I was taping the ankle. So I had to brush up on, a few things like that. But, for the most part, if you understand, if you're doing a lot of different things, you need to understand concussion protocols. Whether you're the treating person or not, you want to be able to be armed with the tools of how to recognize it and how to treat it, and when it is just about a headache or when it's an emergency.
Yeah.
And then
I will say that's, jumping in there, we've had a couple of guys that, again, they screen and they have all the medical staff, here that's handling all that stuff that usually they're screened out to come see me. Sure. There's, nothing structurally going on, but you get a few guys, they'll try to hide some of that stuff to avoid getting sat or missing practice time or fear of getting dropped on the depth chart. That, you've got to be able to recognize some signs of that. Is this a tension headache from just the day-to-day stuff, or do we have a little something more going on? So yeah, it definitely is helpful to be at least versed in that protocol.
Yeah, absolutely. And you also want to make sure that you're developing good relationships with these players. A lot of these players are expecting to go on to the next level. And so they're very particular about who they will work with sometimes, especially the starters that, really have a high potential to move on to the pros or something like that. they're very picky. So you have to go in not only with a high skill level, but you have to have the confidence behind it as well. And I had some interesting conversations sometimes with players. We had one player, a basketball player, and he had hurt his low back to the point where he really couldn't play very well. He was just trying to manage it on his own. And it took me probably every day for a week to convince him to let me adjust him. And he was better afterwards, but he'd never been adjusted before, and he didn't really understand the process. And his fear was that I would make him worse. So you really have to have that good, solid connection, along with, being a good, skilled adjuster and diagnostician.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, I ran into actually a very similar situation just today. I overheard a couple of players coming out of having their massage time that they just weren't getting work done firm enough. It just wasn't getting things moving. They were still feeling it. And I, the player that I have not seen on the table yet. And so, asserted myself into that conversation, to kind of say, hey, you need to come in and see me then tomorrow if you really want to get that worked over. Let's get you over on our side. But some of the technique side of that too, I think, we do a lot of soft tissue stuff with these guys. I mean, we get into some ART, trigger point work. It's a lot of resisted stretching. So definitely, that's a lane that, a lot of these players need and appreciate. We're even doing some dry needling. We're doing some odds and ends things that we're starting now that we've been in there for a bit, getting allowed to start to do. And so, I mean, having a few different tools in the tool bag, along with adjusting is certainly good, but a lot of that will depend on the situation that kind of what the setup is.
Sure. Absolutely. Yeah. It's, you have to let them get comfortable with you, I guess is kind of the point. Yeah. So what I would do sometimes is I would go to their practices just so they got used to seeing me around. So that they really understood that I wasn't just there once in a while, that I was really kind of part of the team. And the coaches addressed me as the team doctor. And there's some nice perks that go along with it sometimes. I got to go to all the games. I got to sit on the bench with the team, which was fun. And as a former baseball player, when I was treating the baseball team, it was fun for me to be sitting in the dugout again. I really enjoyed it. And you get some other perks. You get a little higher level of visibility in your community, which is especially effective if you're in a smaller town. People see you out there with the team, and it just kind of raises the bar a little bit for your clinic.
Yeah, agreed. That's even, the perks that my 9-year-old came with me to a game last weekend. And, we were down before the game, kind of down close to the sideline on the field level. And a few guys coming by, recognized me. They, came over and high-fived her and did some different things. So, you do get a little bit of that kind of, in with the team, or just the fun of that, especially if you were a former athlete, to have a little bit, just that little bit of camaraderie of a locker room again with some of the guys. That is pretty fun. And with guys or gals, depending on, again, what sports you're working with.
Yeah. And sometimes you develop deep relationships, long-term relationships with coaches and things too. And, the cool thing about it is when people going to the games see you there, you become, how do I want to put this? You become present time consciousness with them. So they may not think that they need chiropractic or anything like that right now, but if they do hurt themselves, who are they going to remember? They're going to remember you because they saw you at the games. So there's just a lot of these little perks that come along with it. And I don't know, I just always had fun being around the athletes. They're just fun. Yeah.
Well, I think if you get into too, with the coaches and other staff around the team, if they're seeing you a little bit and getting adjusted by you, and all of those people typically have spouses, girlfriends that aren't anything to do with the sports side of it around the team, but they're living in the community, and certainly if one of them has a need, and they're especially in a bigger program, they may be new to an area. Or are they going to go? Hey, who's the team use? Okay, well, that's who we're going to call too, because they have a practice out in the community that we can go to. And so, same. So a lot of these, the players have have siblings or have family that may be in the area, or it's just your current patient base. They find out you're working with a team.
Right.
They certainly think that's pretty cool, and that makes you more of an expert in their eyes. They're more apt to refer. So it just has a kind of a win-win situation that builds off of itself over time.
Yeah, truly it does. So if you're interested in working with a sports team out there, docs, just go ask. Just go start hanging around. Go to the games, get to know the coaches, find out what kind of training staff they have and medical staff they have. But the big thing is just you got to go ask. And like Alex said, you can't sit back and wait for it to come to you. The school that I work for, even though they didn't have any medical staff, they weren't coming and knocking on my door. I was the one that asked. So it's if you want to be involved, you got to get out there and do it.
And don't take no the first time. It may take some time, but
right.
Continue to go back, continue to make those inroads, and eventually, you'll probably get the yes.
Absolutely. All right, everybody. So the big takeaway: if you want to be involved in sports and bring your chiropractic success into the sports world, you just got to go ask. So get us sorted out there. All right, everybody. Alex, thanks for joining me today. Everybody out there, if you haven't done this yet, go to katzconsultants.com and check us out, see what we're doing to help doctors really improve their chances of success. So I cannot talk today. It's football season, so my voice is very rough. All right, everybody. Thanks for listening today. We'll see you next time.